Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this video, I've got a jewelry project that begins with some gel printing on shrink plastic. You'll want a shrink plastic that is rough on one side, and that is the side that you'll print on. I did a little experimenting with this, enough to know that any more than 2 layers of paint is a risk. So I'm starting here with my first layer of paint, combining 2 lighter colors, white and a pale blue. And I'm using my brayer to combine them in a very thin layer. And over to the side, I've got a piece of mat board that I use to roll excess paint off my brayer, and I'll use that in another project. This texture sheet is a fondant tool from the cake decorating department, and that will lift out a subtle texture from the paint. And I want this layer mostly solid for my base color. I'm pressing my shrink plastic into the paint, and that will lift up a very nice base layer for my project. I'm going to use the mat board to lift up the paint that I missed, so I'm starting off with an even surface for the next layer. And I want my second layer of paint to really contrast with my first layer. So I have got some copper paint, some orange, and then a little metallic brown. Again, I'll use my brayer to blend and roll that paint out evenly. And if you're not familiar with gel printing, there are some great basic tips in one of our site tutorials, and I will link that in the description below. The paints I am using here are just general craft paints. They're nothing special. And again, you will want to plan your colors before you start so you have good contrast in just 2 layers of paint. I want my first layer to show through the second layer, so I'm going to lay a stencil over my gel plate. And this stencil will mask off some of the paint so that the first layer on my shrink plastic remains untouched. There is paint under the stencil, and I decided to add a little of that as well, just for more texture on my shrink plastic. Instead of a stencil in this step, you can use other tools or objects to scrape or lift paint away. For my other experiment, I used bubble wrap, I used the bottom of a plastic bowl, and I used a plastic grocery bag to lift paint away, so you don't need specialized tools at all. Shrink plastic is easily die cut, so I'm going to use these abstract circles from Spellbinders to cut out 2 pairs, and these will shrink to about 1/3 of the original size, so keep that in mind when you choose your shapes. You probably won't want any shape that's smaller than 2 inches across. I've got my die cuts ready, and I decided to add a little ink to the edge of each one. If you do this, make sure that it's an ink that is permanent when heat set. I used VersaFine ink here. You could use StazOn or another hybrid ink. Any of those would work. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch round punch to add a hole to each piece. And you'll want to make sure that's about a 1/4 inch in from the edge as well, because that space will also be shrinking. And these are now ready to pop in the oven. The instructions may vary depending on the brand of plastic you use, but mine are going in the oven at 325 for 1 to 3 minutes. Here's how they look coming out of the oven, and I did quickly press each one down with an acrylic block to get them nice and flat while they were still soft. Let them cool completely, and they will be ready to incorporate into a project. I've got 2 earring ideas for you, so I'll start with a very simple one and then step it up with a bead link for a longer dangle style. For this simpler style, I've got my shrink plastic charm, and you can see the size of the hole I made with my 1/4 inch punch. That is just right. I have a 6mm jump ring, and I'm going to open that up by gripping one side and then rotating the other end toward me like a little door. You don't want to pull this circle out of shape, so this is the right way to open the ring. I'm going to slide my plastic charm on and then also put on a 4mm jump ring. And then I'll close the ring by rotating the ends back together. And you can give them a little wiggle to make sure they're touching. I just need to add the earring hook. And I'm going to open that in the same way by rotating the end toward me with my pliers. Then I'll slide that small ring onto the hook and close the ring on the hook up. Give it a little wiggle to be sure it's closed right up against the wire, and that completes the piece. For this second pair of earrings, I'm going to create a little bead link that goes above my gel printed piece. So I've got a 2-inch copper eye pin, and I'm going to stack some beads on it. I've got a little faceted metal bead, a glass O bead, a stone bead, another O bead, and then some copper beads. Once I have my stack, I'm going to use my round nose pliers to grab the wire, bend the wire over at a 90-degree angle toward me, going in the same direction as the loop at the bottom. And then I'll rotate my pliers and wrap the wire over the top away from me, and then adjust the pliers again so I can complete the loop. And then I'll wrap the little tail around the wire and down toward the beads to secure everything together. I'm going to trim the little end off and then squish the cut end down so it's flat against the wire and it doesn't catch on anything. So that little bead link is done. I've got a 6mm jump ring, and again I'm going to open it by gripping one side and rotating the other end toward me. I'll put my plastic charm on and then hook the bead link in. Close the ring up. And now all that's left to do is to add the hook at the top by rotating the end open, adding the bead link, and then rotating the end back to secure it in place. And that's it. You can use your gel print pieces for other projects or for card embellishments. You can use other mediums or stamp on them. Lots of options. I hope you're inspired. I can't wait to play with this some more. Thank you so much for watching.